or personal computer using Zoom. Sorry, some guidelines for participants. Please utilize the chat or raise hand function if you wish to address the board. Participants will remain on mute until they have been addressed by the board, and participants are required to display their first and last names. All of that said, by tradition, we will start with a roll call of present members. I am Brian Barabee.
Sue Mitra.
Paul Bramwell.
Jim Garrity.
Scott Gear.
We have is Lori.
Did you hear it? Lori Stevenson.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. All right. So first up this evening, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open a hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to discuss a notice of intent filed for 92 Randall Road, DEP file number 112-0767. Lauren, is the applicant or a rep for the applicant here this evening?
Yes, I believe Dan Wolf is here to represent the applicant.
Yes, I'm here.
Dan, do you want to walk us through the what's being proposed real quick?
Sure. Can I share my screen?
That would be excellent, please.
All right. And hopefully that's coming up. There it is.
Yes.
All right. Good evening. My name is Dan Wolf. I'm with David Ross Associates, and I'm representing Wendy Rogers of 92 Randall Road tonight. She is the property owner at 92, and she is in need of a new septic system. Just to orient you, Randall Road is at the top of the screen. There is an existing house there with a pool and gazebo behind it, just adjacent to the wetland area. There's also a large barn off to the left side of the screen. The existing septic system, you'll notice, is not far away from the gazebo, which I dare say is not very far from the wetland either. So hopefully anything we do here is going to be a vast improvement over what's there now. Just uphill of that leaching area, which I'm sorry, I should have been moving my cursor. There's the leaching area there. Right here is the existing septic tank and a sewer line that comes out of the back of the house. We're hoping to intercept with that sewer line to put in a septic tank and a pump chamber, and through a force main, pump everything over to the front yard. What's interesting about this property is we've got a lot of resource areas that are all colliding here. There is a perennial stream off to the right side here, and the 200-foot riverfront zone is this arc here. According to your bylaw, we're also identifying the 225 arc, which is right through here. So you can see the majority of the work area is all within the riverfront area. And just for clarification, there is also another line on the plan. Another line on the plan here, that right here, which is the 100-foot offset or 100-foot riverfront zone. When we went out there to do the soil testing, I was trying to get as far away from the wetlands as possible, and we started off in this area and found very shallow depths to ledge in these holes here. We jumped toward this area here and found adequate depth, although there was ledge up just below the system area. We were actually happy to find this soil right in here, which allowed us to propose a Title V system that is under review of the board. Actually, I believe it has been permitted by the Board of Health now. And this is as far away from the resource area as we can get. This area over here is all exposed ledge, so it was no surprise that we were pushed in this direction. So anyway, the effort was made to keep as far away as possible. And as stated at the beginning of this, I think it would be a vast improvement over what is there now. So if I can answer any of your questions, I'd be happy to.
Okay, that would be great. Actually, can I ask first, Lauren, did you have a colored version of this plan?
Yep, I can share that.
Yeah, do you mind bringing it?
Sure. I'll just have to have Dan stop
Excuse me.
sharing his screen
There it
and then
goes.
I'll pull that up.
Sorry, thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
And I'll let Lauren bring it up. It's the same. It's the same plans we were just looking at. Only she colored the different zones and kind of
Okay.
highlighted where the work's being done,
Sure.
which I think might just make everybody's life easier. But
Yes, absolutely.
okay,
Can you see that?
not yes. Now we can. And are you
Okay.
able to zoom in like one click,
Or oh,
or not?
how's that? Is that was that the same thing? Let's see. How's that?
good.
Maybe go out one. Sorry. Back to where it originally was, probably.
Okay.
All right. I
Yeah.
think that gets us everything right.
Yep. So we have the 225 riverfront,
Yep.
200 riverfront, 100 riverfront, 100-foot buffer zone. The 30-foot no disturb zone is this yellow, and then the proposed erosion controls are the orange.
Yep. Okay. So generally speaking, it is you are moving further from the resource area. You can see that you're pulling out. I guess so. The first few questions we had, and one came from the conservation agent and from DEP as well. Was how did you determine the median annual high water mark? How was that determined?
It was the bankful conditions. There's actually I believe it's probably a man-made stream, although it's been there for many years, that goes across the east side of the yard that we've delineated, as I say, on the east side or right side of the plan.
Okay.
And since you brought up the DEP letter, DEP also points out that the inner and outer riparian zones are not depicted when in fact they are.
I didn't have that question brought up because it looked like we had everything there.
Yep. And of course, we're talking about a septic system which technically is exempt, but just to get everything right, we do have it there. If it's under debate, it's moving 2 feet left or right, but the end result is all the work is within the riverfront area, and we're as far away as we can possibly get.
Yeah, I'm aware of. So I'm going to open it to questions and comments from other commission members in a minute, and to see if anybody would require or want a site visit. I'm familiar with this property. I can picture it. I can see where it is. I have an idea what you're working with space wise. I guess the questions I still had or may have is, so the system that you're taking out, how is that is it being demolished, buried in situ? Is it getting pulled out?
Yes, the way this will work is this is an old leach bed. It's made up of earthen materials and some inert piping. It may even be an old clay pipe in the ground. All of that can stay in the ground. The Board of Health endorses that we just stop utilizing it and leave it in place. It poses no further threat. The threat does exist with the existing septic tank. That's a void space that could collapse someday. So what the Board of Health always has us do is we pump the contents of that tank out, and then it is either filled with clean gravel fill or it is also crushed and buried in place.
Yeah, the clean fill.
And typically that is a very low impact situation where it's just filled or crushed and covered over and seeded.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at the conservation agent notes as well as my own. I think the only other thing I had done was did you calculate the number of trees that needed to be removed?
There are no trees that need to be removed.
Excellent. All right, because there was no tree numbers, and it was like we kind of all right. So
Right.
yeah, no trees planned removed at this point. Okay, I think that's all the initial questions I had. Let me open it up to the commission members for any initial questions, comments, or thoughts.
Just a quick question, Dan. So for the erosion controls, I'm having a hard time saying this. If you're going to remove or do something with the existing leach field, wouldn't you want to move the erosion controls closer to the stream on the other side of the leach field?
On the north side,
Oh, on the bottom side. Yeah.
on the bottom. Well, the erosion controls are set more along the lines of where the gradient of the ground is going. All the work that's being done in the back of the house with the septic tank and running that force main is running in the topography is running in a southerly direction, and that's why we've gathered all that disturbance with the lower area of erosion control. On the leaching area, the wetland is actually across the street, and the road itself is going to serve as the barrier.
Okay.
But there is a barrier up there just to, if anything, that will be a great visual marker for the limit of work.
Okay, but you get the pond down there too, right?
Yep. And all the disturbance up gradient of the pond is captured by that lower erosion control line outlined in orange.
Okay. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, what size erosion control or wattles are you planning on using?
They're on page 2 of the plan. Let me just pull that up on mine here, just so I can quote it.
Yeah, Lauren, if you want to have
Yep.
let Dan share.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, you're asking me to share again?
Oh, did you? I was going to say, I don't
Oh,
know
if you don't
Lauren-
mind, I
Oh,
didn't
no.
have the second sheet on that page.
Okay, let me go back to sharing. And here it comes. So down the bottom of page 1 is the erosion control barrier, which we're putting in, or we're proposing a silt fence and a straw wattle. And I think the question was, what's the size? It says 9-inch diameter wattle.
Thank you, sir.
Scott, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wasn't able to get it clear from the copy I had on the plan. Where exactly is the stream? Is it that?
It's this thread
That's
over
the
here.
stream right there?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then the pond, and I couldn't tell from Google Maps when I looked, the pond is a pond? And the
Yes, it is.
225 is off of the pond as well as because it looks like I'm just trying to gauge the distance.
Well, the 225, the pond itself is where the perennial stream would be stopping.
And you're, okay,
The riverfront zone is way out here.
yeah,
If you were to have me do 200 feet from the pond, which is down here, that 200-foot line would just extend out here behind the barn.
okay.
Other comments, questions, or thoughts from commission members?
Yeah, is it a dual force main line or is it just a singular force main line?
There is a proposal to put an ejector pump here in the barn. That's just to facilitate having a bathroom in the barn.
Mhm.
That would then put the sewage into the septic tank, and then the pump chamber pumps everything up to the leaching area in the front.
So it would go backwards towards the house and then back towards the leaching field, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And what size force main are you looking at?
2-inch.
Okay.
And I'm assuming, Dan, like all of the disturbances are going to be allowed to renaturalize.
Well, no, it would be intentional to loam it and seed everything. This is in an existing yard.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, sorry. Regreened. I should have said regreened. No, I get it. It's lawn returning to lawn basically once everything's done.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. They don't want a natural strip just going right down the middle of their lawn. Sorry.
And actually that force main runs right along the edge of the driveway. This dash line here represents the outer edge of the driveway that exists there. And so we're just going to run the force main just on the outside of it and then cross under the driveway to the leaching area.
Is there anything to protect that, such as a ductile iron pipe or something of that magnitude to go under the driveway?
Yeah, it's labeled right here, proposed sleeve.
Sorry, it's very small on my screen. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I couldn't see it either.
I appreciate the questions. I'm also even happier that I have answers. So it's all on the plan there.
Figured as much, but the writing is small.
Sure.
Other commission member comments, questions, thoughts? Okay. Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? Saying none. All right. So generally speaking, Dan, often we tried to get into the very good habit of basically if we had no more questions and we kind of figure out what we need the conditions to look like, closing the hearing, giving the conservation staff the 2 weeks to draw up the plans and then voting them up or down at our next hearing. That's probably, and again, I'll put it out to commission members, that's probably what I'd propose doing here is closing tonight, having them draw up the order of conditions and then just voting it up or down at our next meeting. That said, I think the plan as presented, again, it pulls stuff away from the resource area. It is a need. I understand the Board of Health is in the process of approving the plan. The only other conditions I would say, and ones that will show up is some of our boilerplate stuff that show up in our regular conditions, one of which will probably have something about the erosion and sediment controls being in place, inspected and approved by the conservation agent before work begins. So basically you put your erosion control in, set a time, Rebecca or Lauren will come out and say, yep, it's all in correctly before you begin.
Okay.
We'll probably we usually put something in about the stabilization of the site within true growing seasons. It's clear that you're regreening the area, but just making sure that it is actually regreened and not, kept as a dirt path at this point, or,
Right.
Left to a road or something like that. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I'm guessing we'd add something about that in. Usually would put stuff in about tree removal, but I understand there is no tree removal associated with this. So that would probably be covered. And I think that's all I'm seeing. Commission members, if we were to approve these plans kind of as submitted with those conditions, are there additional conditions you're looking for or additional questions you have right now?
Is there a clean out on there? It's a 2-inch force main, so I'm just curious on if there's going to be a clean out anywhere.
Force mains do not have cleanouts. No.
Other questions? Seeing none too. In that case, and again, I'll put it out there to commission members. That's kind of how I would say to proceed, is that we close the meeting tonight, give Rebecca and or Lauren a chance to draw up the order of conditions, and then we can vote on it at the next meeting. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, Dan, comfortable with all that?
Sure. Sounds
All right.
great.
In that case, I'm going to make a motion that we close the public hearing for 92 Randall Road DEP file number 112-0767. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Sue,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
and Lauren, I'm an aye as well. So we'll probably take no action on this tonight, but Lauren, can we add it to our agenda for our next hearing at 7:15 p.m.?
Yes.
And I would assume you do not need me there. Is that correct?
I do not. Yeah, unless I do not think so. I was going to say it's our usual boilerplate
Sure.
conditions similar to what you've seen in the past and what we've discussed tonight. So we've already closed the hearing, so we can't take any additional public comment. It would just be if you had questions, basically.
Right. Very good.
All right, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Yep,
I appreciate your
and-
time.
Just to note, March is a long month, so the next meeting will be on April 7th, so that will be 3 weeks out instead of our regular 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Next up this evening, the Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, discussing the notice of intent for 455 Sugar Road, DEP file number 112-0766. I see Ryan Proctor here is here this evening, rep for the applicants. Do you want to kind of fill us in on well, I don't know if you want to pull up the plans and kind of show us where things stand real quick.
Gladly. Yep, that'd be great. I'll share my screen here.
Thank you.
Just for the record, I believe the applicants are on this call as well with us.
Oh, excellent.
Yep. So at the last meeting, we presented the project again. This is a proposed detached accessory dwelling unit at 455 Sugar Road. At the last meeting, I had presented just verbally. We had not submitted any new materials to the commission, but the proposed and existing vegetation on the site, particularly the tree removal associated with our preferred alternative, which is on my screen here, as well as our first alternative, which has the ADU located further into the site, further into the wooded area. So subsequent to that meeting, and as promised, I did submit a cover letter to your commission that summarized the proposed alteration with our preferred alternative as well as the first alternative. And then I did also provide some responses to the comments from DEP, as well as a summary of the trees that are to be removed from the resource area. So just real quickly, and these are numbers I spoke about at the last meeting, but this is the first time that I had submitted them to you. So the proposed disturbance for our preferred alternative within the 225-foot brook offset is 6,400 square feet. The proposed disturbance within the 225-foot brook offset for the alternative, which has the ADU located further into the site, is actually less disturbance within the riverfront area. However, as a total limit of disturbance, the preferred alternative is just shy of 10,000 square feet of disturbance, and the alternative, which has the ADU located further into the site, is about 25% more, about 12,600 square feet on the site. And again, this site the topography of the site does slope all the way north to south towards the brook. So the site is entirely tributary to that brook, which is why we're preferring to minimize that disturbance as a whole where we can. So the tree removal associated with these two alternatives, again, this is just within the resource area, not as a whole, but within the resource area for a preferred alternative, there are 32 trees that need to come down that are 4 inches or larger. And there are 13 associated with the first alternative. And the replacement per your tree bylaw for the preferred alternative would be 59 trees. And for the first alternative would be 24 trees. Now, I would just like to note that these tree removals are for within the resource area only. There are actually more, when you compare just straight up disturbance for both alternatives, there are actually more trees that need to come down for this first alternative, just given the wooded nature of the site. So I won't go through each of the trees, but I did supply a summary with each alternative, with the diameter of the tree at breast height, and then the number of replacements that would correspond to. Associated or per your zoning bylaw or your, wetlands bylaw. One of the other items that was brought up at the last meeting and that we did submit last week to the commission, we were asked to evaluate and perhaps provide documentation of the existing vegetation that the owners have performed on the site. They are avid gardeners, and you'll see with some of the photos I'll share in a moment, but we submitted an on-site environmental mitigation form that talks about the existing vegetation that they've installed on the site since they've owned the property, as well as our proposed revegetation plan associated with the project. So I'll just go quickly through this document. I'll share the pictures at the end too, because they are impressive in my opinion. But since owning the property, the owners have installed 8 fruit trees, a combination of peach, pear, apricot, and apple trees, deciduous support trees, a couple maple trees, some Chinese tune, as well as some vines. And then the lower growth cover, they've installed over 70 juniper shrubs. Again, I'll show pictures of all of this in a moment. Over 30 rhododendrons and azaleas, and then several ornamental shrubberies, which are listed here as well. And lastly, and most significantly, they've planted over 3,000 hosta plants, 300 varieties, and those are surrounding the existing limit of clearing on the site, as well as around the existing dwelling. So in addition to what they've already done on the site and to provide some additional mitigation for the proposed ADU, we are also proposing to plant 5 native maple trees around the site, around the proposed driveway for the ADU and the dwelling, 8 high bush blueberries to provide some mix and lower cover, as well as 12 rhododendrons and azaleas. And on top of that, we do intend to utilize some of the existing hosta plants and plant some divisions of that around the ADU to function really as 2 ways. One, as to provide some immediate vegetated coverage and help stabilize that slope, as well as proposing that long-term restoration that would be there, and stabilization and the environmental benefits associated with that. So I'd like to just share a couple of pictures. I know it was snowy when we did the site walk. So this is the existing backyard looking out towards Coventry Wood Road. You can see in the background here. So for the commission members that were out on the site, we kind of snuck our way down the steep snow bank right here, and the ADU would be situated up close towards the road here. But you can see all the native vegetation that the owners have installed around the perimeter of the yard. This is a view, again, by the tree line. The ADU proposed ADU location is kind of behind us to the right off page here, but this is more of the existing landscaping. This is in the front yard. This is along Sugar Road. You can see some of the plantings here. One of the trees they planted, more landscaping. View of the front yard. Again, in the backyard, this is around the dwelling that they've installed. And then again, this is supplementing the existing tree line and backyard. And the septic system is located mostly in the yard, partially underneath the plate structure here, the existing system that services the house. This is the view, another view of the hostas in the backyard. And same thing along the tree line that follow the entire backyard, basically. So the existing area of the landscaping that they've done well exceeds the area of disturbance that we're proposing for the preferred alternative. So it was brought up at the last meeting to at least document that and show that the owners of this property are like I said before, avid gardeners, certainly have looked to enhance the property through the vegetation, and that's something we're hoping to continue with this application. So that's kind of where we left at the last meeting. I can pull up the site plan. I'm happy to take any questions on either the planting plan or the site plan itself, if the commission has any.
I guess and again, I am not the expert. I would want to double check this, but I do not think that hostas are a native species for our particular region in Bolton.
They are not.
Right? So
They're
again,
not.
when we depending on what we discuss, as far as naturalization goes, or planting native species or shrubs, hostas are very much non-native, I believe.
So,
Go ahead,
yeah,
Sue.
it's definitely not native. A lot of things in there are not native, but I was reading through our bylaw and it doesn't necessarily specify native. It just says non-invasive, non-native. Does that make sense?
So yeah,
So don't plant an invasive plant, which none of these are, but
Okay.
I don't think our bylaw actually says specifically you have to plant native.
It's a good question. Yeah, but I think it's a lot of times we've put it into our conditions.
That's fine. Yeah.
And again, that would not require like a replanting, but
Right.
if any new disturbed areas, if we say to replant, anything you're putting in for mitigation, disturbed areas would need to be a native species.
Yep.
Understood.
So since we last met, I've had a chance to talk to the conservation agent as well to see, what we could do and what we could accept for mitigation, how we could try to work this. And she took a really good close look at our bylaws.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to get around the tree replacement. But the one thing she did find is that it does allow us to mitigate with shrubbery. And she, looking at the property and how it was set, that there are some shrubs native, and you brought like high bush blueberry is a perfect one, that could add to the undergrowth of some of the forested area there. That there are some areas that are currently forested where it would take, and it would be beneficial to the undergrowth to those areas. So she thought there would be room on the property if we were to allow a switch from trees to bushes. But that the bylaw was very specific about the amount of trees that should be replaced. And it's difficult. It's kind of set up in a way where there's ways to get around it, but it's more for if there's an emergency reason for it.
Okay.
Again, and I think we all recognize, especially when people went out on site, that there is a house basically, or a structure between where this is being proposed and the wetland offset. There's already something kind of built in between it, so it's kind of it makes it a little bit safer and pulls it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think Rebecca was trying to look at what we could possibly do that wouldn't run us afoul of the bylaw. We would be actually following in our bylaw. And I think what she determined that is if we asked that any trees greater than 12-inch diameter be replaced at a 1-to-1 ratio, and less than a 12-inch diameter could be replaced at a 2-to-1 ratio of shrubs to trees. And I think there was and Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, did she attempt to do, or did we get a breakdown of what we thought that was? The 12 greater than
Just
12
taking a
inch
look at the
versus
notes.
less.
I don't think she had included what that calculation. I think she had included what the proposed number of trees that Ryan had mentioned during the last meeting. So I don't think we have a calculation for that.
Gotcha. But she thought that would be keeping us within our bylaw. Okay. And yet allowing some flexibility, again, based on where this is. And also with the understanding, and I probably should have brought this up originally, that I think most of us, and I'll put it to the commission again, most of us are on board with your preferred plan rather than the setback other plan, basically.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. I guess that, that's kind of where she came down. If we wanted to go with the preferred plan, which again, I think most of us are comfortable doing, that keeping within the bylaw, what we could basically do was do like that 1-to-1 of trees over 12, and then a 2-to-1 bush to tree of trees under 12. And she thought that was possible on the property. But I don't know if you want to respond to that, or if you want to let me open it up to other commission members to see if get their comments or questions or thoughts regarding that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that Rebecca looked at that. I was looking off screen. I was listening. I was doing a quick count of our table here.
I do the same. I have notes everywhere.
So it looks like we have 13 of the 32 trees are over 12 inches in diameter. So that would mean that we have 19 that are 12 inches or less than 12 inches, excuse me. So we'd be looking for 13 new trees on site, plus 19 times 2, so 38 shrubs to provide mitigation for those 32 trees that are coming down. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, that would be the calculation, and based on if that was the amount that were coming down.
Okay. So I'm happy to listen to other comments too. I know the applicants are here on the call also. If they have a thought on that, I think that's feasible. We'd certainly be willing to submit a landscape plan, prior to construction if that would work with the commission. I don't know if that's something that could be conditioned, but I think that sounds reasonable in this case. But happy to hear what the other commissioners think also.
Excellent. Thank you. So other commission members, any initial comments, questions, thoughts?
Yeah, Brian, I'm not sure if I didn't hear you say it, but just for Ryan, the notes do specify, and I think the bylaws specify native trees. So it would have to be a native tree would be the 1-for-1.
Okay.
And then I think what would be meaningful when you do come back, if it's not 100% to what Brian just talked about, having a clear understanding of what that delta is. Meaning,
Okay, yeah.
you know, we can't fit 3 trees or something. If that is the case, just have a clear understanding of that and what trees wouldn't fit in, I think would be very beneficial and allow us to have a more meaningful conversation and provide you some more meaningful feedback.
Okay. All right. That makes sense to me. Yep.
Other comments, questions, thoughts? And any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? Or the applicants? Okay. So it sounds like we're comfortable with that. If you want to basically, create an updated planting plan based off the preferred plans, and you think it's feasible, would be just continue the next meeting, see if we can present that. And I don't think we had any other outstanding questions about the project, but let me put that out to commission members now.
Sure.
Other than the tree replanting schedule or the whole site replanting schedule, were there any outstanding questions about this particular project? So I'm not seeing any. So I think that would kind of be the last piece that we're looking for, Ryan.
Okay. All right. That makes sense to me. I appreciate you
Okay.
working with us and giving us the guidance on that.
No problem. So then if it's okay with you, we'll continue to our next meeting.
Yes, and we'll have a landscape plan to you a week in advance of that.
That's excellent. And we'll make sure we go through it and see if I have any questions, I'll try to send them off ahead of time.
Brian, you have a hand raised.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Who? I'm sorry. Was there a comment
Lizzie
or question?
Phone has a
Liz-
hand raised.
Liz iPhone.
Yes, Liz. Lauren, could you unmute Liz iPhone, please?
Did it work?
It did. We can hear
good.
you.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I'm Elizabeth Helder, 38 Coventry Wood Road. I'm a neighbor of Zhao and Shaw.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to speak in support of the work that they're doing on the property. I've lived in town 11, almost 12 years, and I've known the girls. I think we bought our houses almost at the same time. They have done so much work on that property. And I know that you're putting some conditions on the replanting and the revegetation of the property. I'm quite sure that they will probably end up doubling the recommendation that you have them do. They are wonderful gardeners and they have just transformed that whole property. But I had a couple of questions about some of the 32 trees that you're talking about removing for the ADU. A lot of the trees that are back in their backyard in that wooded area look like they're half dead. And I'm wondering, has anybody evaluated the 32 trees that are being proposed to be taken down for their, like, is worthiness a word? I don't know. Like, are the 32 trees they're proposing to take down actually real viable trees? Because most of it looks like it's completely dead back there to me.
I can answer real quick on that one, and a few things. I've seen the photos that Ryan submitted and of the property, and I know some people that went and I agree they've done amazing work. It looks absolutely gorgeous. When it comes to the trees, there's a few things with that. There's, first of all, if it's if you say it's a sick or a dying tree, the question is, does it have another 5 years? Does it have another 10 years? 15 years, 20 years, 25, and a lot of arborists say there's no way to know. And secondly, dead trees are also really, really viable for the resource area. There's a lot of things that live and work off of dead trees. It also still provides shade coverage in its own way. It does have a value for us. Even dead forest area has value. and it tends to regrow as things die underneath it. Does that make sense?
I agree. I have a piloted woodpecker going at one of our trees right now, and it's gonna turn into a bug hotel, which is great for, which is fantastic, and we're gonna leave it there. It's just that 32 dead trees, or mostly dead trees, and then you want them to replant how many now? I know that a lot of it is going to be bushes. What do you consider to be a native tree? Like,
Things like white pine are native. I believe oak's native. I am not the best arborist here, so I will not go long on that. But there are, God, I used to know the website offhand. There are really great websites where you can see what species are native to this region and to this, like you can get it very localized to this area.
Okay.
But those two off the top of my head, I know oak is, white pine. I'm trying to think of regular maple. There are a bunch.
okay.
But like
and
something like a Japanese maple or a baobab tree, something like that is just not native. It's not supposed to grow here. It doesn't support our
Correct.
local flora, fauna, etc.
Correct.
So
Okay.
it's a relatively big list. I just don't know it all off the top of my head.
Okay. And I heard in the discussion that some of the trees are 12 inches in diameter, and they must replace those in kind.
Correct. Yeah, it's a 1-to-1. Now it's not a seedling. It's a sapling or bigger, basically. So you don't have to bring in a full size tree. I should have made that clear.
There you go. Because a
and-
12-inch diameter tree is a pretty big tree.
Yeah, no, it's a sapling replacement. Generally, firing on seedling, we'll do something with like a 2-year growing cycle to make sure something's taking.
Okay.
So we'll say sapling or larger.
But you're not telling them that they have to bring in 13 12-inch diameter trees.
Correct. 13 trees that can grow to that size.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
a sapling size to begin with.
Okay. That's totally fine. I know their parents. They're all lovely people, and this, I'm sure that they will do exactly what you tell them to do and more. So,
I don't doubt it.
so thank you very much for allowing me to participate.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Okay.
So let me ask you any other questions or comments for members of the public or commission members for that matter? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to make a motion that we continue the public hearing. For 455 Sugar Road DEP file number 112-0766 until our next public hearing, Tuesday, April 7th at 7:20 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Sue,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
and Lauren. I'm an aye as well.
Great. Thank you very much for your time tonight and your help.
All
I
right.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you, guys.
Yep. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Oops, sorry, I lost my agenda. Give me 1 second. Next up this evening, excuse me, we have a discussion and possible vote for a field amendment for 113 Still River Road. This is a hearing we had closed last week. Lauren, I don't believe the applicant is with us tonight, correct?
No, he's not. That would be Mr. Broomfield. He couldn't make it tonight.
Could you pull up the plan on yours? On your screen? And I believe Mr. Broomfield, when he said he wasn't going to be here tonight, said he would be available via phone if we needed to reach out and call him.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
And this came out, we had, and this is why we should sometimes close and let get our full things get written up. We had closed this last week. DEP ended up coming back to Mr. Broomfield, and they had one small suggestion that he basically do a paved apron to where the gravel driveway connects with the main road to Still River Road. You can see he drew it in here on this plan right there, that little shaded area. I can't. Do you remember what the square footage of 400, 460,
400.
square
400.
feet? Yeah. Excuse me. And he was proposing to do this, or asking if he could do this as a field amendment to the RDA, the plans we had approved last week. Again, DEP suggested they do this to kind of prevent carry over of the gravel into the main road. To have this, basically, it's like an 8-foot apron, I want to say, or 6-foot apron. It's not that large, if I remember correctly, but and then just a little extension down.
Brian,
Go ahead, Sue.
it's not DEP, it's DPW. That's
I'm sorry.
right.
God, I'm so used to saying DEPD. DPW.
Just checking.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, Sue. So yeah, it was a request by DPW, again, to prevent the tracking of gravel basically out onto the paved surface. They wanted that extended apron. The rest of the gravel driveway is gravel as proposed. It is just the cap there basically where it meets up with the road. And he was requesting just to have this added as a field amendment. If we could do a roll call vote, that they could add this to their plans as a field amendment. I'm comfortable with it. I didn't have any additional real questions, but I want to put it out there to the commission members. Any thoughts, comments, any outstanding questions? Everybody comfortable with what's being proposed, understand what's being proposed and comfortable?
Yes.
Excuse me. Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular discussion? Seeing none. I'm going to call for a roll call vote to approve the field amendment to the RDA for 113 Still River Road. Oh boy, hold on a second. Just trying to figure out my wording. We're going to have a roll call vote to approve the amended plans for the RDA for 113 Still River Road can be completed as presented this evening as a field amendment to the original RDA. All those in favor, please say aye. And before we do, Lauren, did I get that out correctly?
I think the one change I would make is it's a DOA, so to the determination instead of RDA.
Wasn't it an RDA? Or was
Well,
it
it's an
DOA?
RD, so RDA is the request for determination of applicability, and then what was
Determination,
approved was
okay.
the determination.
Okay. So in that case, my apologies. I'm going to call for a roll call vote to approve the field amendment presented at this evening's meeting, or the plans presented at this evening's meeting for 113 Still River Road. Oh my God. Let me try it for the 7th time. Roll call vote that the proposed amendment to the DOA for 113 Still River Road can be filed as a field amendment to that DOA. Does that cover it, Lauren?
Yes.
Okay. God, I apologize, everyone. That shouldn't have been that hard. All those in favor, please say aye, starting with Sue.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
And Lauren, I'm an aye as well.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up, and I'm not sure if anyone is here tonight, it was the continuing discussion on the proposed trail extension for Taggart Forest Land. Oh, I was just Drew's here. Do you want to give us an update? I know Rebecca and you have been going back and forth on some questions and looking at some possible alternatives.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Yes, Rebecca and I have been going back and forth. I realized some commission members walked the alternative route that would take the road. I still feel that's not the best approach due to the narrow roadway, the guardrails, the inability for users to step off the road in a tight condition. I think there's value in having a continuous forested path through the woods that connects the high school to the Taggart Forest land property. I also feel that possibly the human interfered dam breaching is caused by being in such an isolated area that's not really viewable from the public. So there may be a side benefit of having a publicly accessible trail right near this dam that's getting intentionally breached, could have some passive eyes on it to prevent this sort of thing in the future. My proposal is going from a 24-foot FRP bridge to more of a stepping stone like crossing. That way, if it does flood, it's not a big deal. It's not going to affect the stream bank properties at all. It's really minimal fill, if you will. I think there's a de minimis sort of regulation that could be applied here, that it's such a small amount of flood capacity that's being interfered with that it, doesn't really make a big difference in the long term, and it's still providing, public access to the mill site, to the beaver dam, and the connectivity. So it's kind of my one last pitch to say, like, I believe in this project. I realize there is an alternative. I don't think it's a good one. So I'm just wondering if the commission is willing to do maybe another site visit now that the snow is gone. Some of my flags can actually be seen from under the snow of where the proposed stepping stone crossing would be. And just seeing if the commission is open to that sort of thing.
Well, I'll put it out to other commissioners. I'm happy to go back out and take a look. I'm with, like, I would much prefer that the trail went that way through the woods. But I know a lot of what, well, a big chunk of Rebecca's concern is that flooding, is that it's so hard to predict when it's going to flood, and when it floods, it's a large flow through. And she's rightfully concerned about safety issues. If we know big floods come down here at unplanned times, we can't, in theory, we shouldn't be sending people through in a non-safe conveyance. If we know for a fact that every once in a while, and it bothers me that, like, it's possibly human, somebody's going to breach that dam and there's going to be a huge flow of water that comes down. I know that's one of her concerns. I'd be happy to go out and take a look again now that we can see it better. I'm hoping to find an alternative, but it's hard for me to get around that one too, when it becomes a safety issue or something that we might be liable for. I need to look to her expertise more. But let me put it out to other commission members too. Other commission members have comments or thoughts?
Yeah, like the stepping stone idea is interesting. I'd certainly be up for a site visit to kind of see that a little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah, I think another site visit would be helpful. And Drew, if you could, flag out exactly where the bridge is going to go, because it wasn't clear where it was going when we went up the first time.
Yeah, I think it was covered with like a foot of snow.
Yeah.
There are little pin flags in the ground, so
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that you couldn't find them, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're still there. Just
Okay.
the snow's gone.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Sam,
Brian,
did you have-
I just got a question.
go ahead, Scott.
Referencing the liability piece, what exactly is the concern, for liability? Is it for being injured on the path, injured on because of the potential random flub? That, I guess I'm just not clear on what's being referred to, and whether or not we've actually talked to any legal guidance on whether or not what the actual liability would be.
Yeah, I I'm not sure if anybody on the commission knows better. I am not a lawyer, so I am not going to try to guess at what the legal ramifications are. I can see that, like, if we know a path is unsafe and we place the path there anyways, how that might be something we would be liable for. But again, I am not a lawyer. It's well worth us asking these questions, and I think this is something too that Rebecca will usually watch these meetings the next day to see if there's any questions or comments from commission members that hopefully she could find the answer to for us. Or
Okay.
Lauren, if you know offhand, Lauren, or if you could possibly look that up or show us where we can find it.
Well,
Sure,
I
yeah,
guess,
I don't know offhand, so I
Okay.
can check in on that at another time.
I guess my specific question is if there's a concern about liability based on safety, specifically what the safety concern is, because that's what I'm unclear on. Is it the pathway? Is it the chance of the flood? Is it the alteration from a bridge to a stepping stone? I just don't understand what the safety concern is, and that's what I'd like to understand.
Gotcha. And again, I can't say 100%, but I'm thinking what part of it was with the bridge, in order to be up to the proper standards for what we're trying to cross, had to be a significant length. That one that I don't think the trust wanted to undertake a bridge of that length, and I can understand that. I don't know that we'd want one back there too. So an alternative would be the stepping stones. But if the amount of flooding that goes through there on an irregular basis would be able to wipe somebody off the stepping stones and injure them, and we placed a path through an area that we know, I don't want to say massive, but a larger than expected flood comes down at irregular intervals, then we're sending people down a path that we know is inherently unsafe, in that, like, if you have small kids with you, you don't want a huge torrent of rushing water coming down as you're trying to walk across a low point in the terrain, if that makes sense. And
Okay.
again,
I
that's
think-
my understanding. I don't know if this is all 100%.
Yeah. Well, that's my question is I just want, so it sounds like the safety concern is that someone could get swept away on the irregular flooding that occurs. So,
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And I think, Scott, just based on conversations from the past, there are some safety concerns that I have with bringing it towards the road, because it is a really tight and narrow spot along the roadway.
Yep.
And I don't know if we've, reached out to fire or the police department just to see if there's any like accident records. But I would be surprised if there aren't, just based on the location. And getting input from, either the fire chief or the new police chief, seeing if there's any records of that might be worthwhile as well.
No, and I agree, Sam. I think you're probably talking about a greater risk having the path that close to the road than you are on the flood. So and it's hard to, and I get it, Brian, it's hard to kind of quantify what the risk is, because it could happen 6 times in a year. It could happen never in a year. And I understand that there's no record of it. So it's just trying to figure out that threshold. And that's why I asked if whether or not we have approached legal guidance to determine if we put a path through an area in the woods, because there's always risk walking in the woods regardless. Are we or the conservation trust taking on additional liability? Because there's a difference between risk and liability. What you're referencing or concern about is a liability to the town, to the commission, to the trust, as opposed to a risk which is inherent in trails. So that might be worthwhile having a deeper conversation about that, and maybe seeking some legal guidance on where that line is between risk and liability.
And I think that there are some locations where it's more prone to flooding that have, signs delineated as such, of like, basically you're entering that location at your own risk and just denoting that as such. So having a conversation with someone of legal capacity, I don't think is a bad idea at all. But if you're going to, ask the question, I would also ask the question of, are there things that we can do to mitigate that as well?
Yeah, I have an email from Rebecca that all of our trails are, at your own risk.
It's a
That's
good
what I
point.
thought too.
Yeah, that was always my understanding too.
But she also mentioned we try not to create pathways that are known issues as well. So I guess for my
Yeah,
knowledge,
whereas-
do we have any sort of data on these dam breaches in this area? And in terms of it happened X times over Y number of years or anything like that, or
I don't. I'd be curious if DPW does. So, Lauren, I was going to say if you could jot that one down too.
Well, and Brian, out of curiosity, do we have the information from DPW as to how, like, what the, year storm that they built their bridge to? Is it the 100-year storm? Is it the 10-year storm? Because that is a huge difference when we're talking about rain flow data. And I understand that this is not rainfall, it is dam breaches, but water is water hydraulically.
Well, I was going to say, rainfall can cause the dam breaches as well.
Right. Exactly. So, and in theory, if we're willing to say, yeah, we're willing to drive cars over the road, with that, theoretically, we should allow people to cover that bridge as well. So I'm just curious, what is the engineering scope of that from the DPW?
Would imagine that is publicly available. So, Lauren, if you can jot that down as well. All right. Other comments, questions, thoughts? Okay. So, Drew, it sounds like we're going to try to find out some legal questions. We're going to try to look into a couple other things, especially with DPW. But in the interim, Lauren, if we can send something around tomorrow to try to set up a site visit.
Sure, I can reach out to Drew tomorrow to set that up.
Okay.
awesome.
Is
Thank
there
you so
a
much.
way
All
to
right,
do
yeah.
that on? Sorry,
ahead.
is there a way to do that on, like, I don't know, a Friday? For those of us who work during the week, that's probably the easiest day for me to be able to take some time to do something like this.
Typically, well, in terms of conservation staff being able to attend, typically they can't do Fridays, but I think in the past the commission has done Fridays if that's the only time available for some of the members, and it also depends on the applicant too and their availability. So we can see if that's an option.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry about the barking dogs, and thank you.
Love the dogs. All right. All right. So next up on our agenda, so we had the continued discussion to review, discuss, and consider updating the dogs on conservation land rules and regulations. If you recall, last time we had opted for doing some enhanced signage as to what the rules and regulations on conservation land were, seeing how that affects it. I've asked Lauren and Rebecca to start trying to capture data too, to see if we have less incidents and or complaints now, and trying to track that over the next, I would say at least 3 weeks, at least till the next meeting, if not longer, to see if that's having an effect. Lauren, is there any way you could bring up, like, did you have the history of the Bower Springs?
Yes.
So again, this is in talking with Rebecca. She was happy to do the signage and try to extend it out that way. But she did point out that we have been trying to do signage for quite some time now. It really hasn't been having an effect. I'm more hopeful this time. But she had also kind of pulled up kind of a history of the Bower Springs conservation property, when it was acquired and what it was acquired for. it's interesting reading. This is all in your packets, members of the public. If anybody who wants this, bleh. If it's not posted on our website, you can generally request it from either Lauren or Rebecca. It's interesting reading, looking at Bowers Springs. It's become such a heavy dog use property. You know, we often think of it in terms of, you know, people and who bring their dogs. I know I've brought my dogs there. It is doing a large disservice to the conservation of the property. It's a difficult thing to look at because I am, again, I've always had dogs. I'm big in favor of people being able to use these properties and use them to do things like go walking with their dogs. But it has started to become somewhat detrimental to the property. There have been, and I think we have it somewhere on our agenda or in our notes. I know there has been some like flagging of dog waste at Bowers Springs, especially after the snow melt. Trying to see, do we have somewhere how much he actually found? So I think he found 77 droppings basically from different dogs, and that was ones that he actually flagged on Bowers Springs. There was an additional 4 in the parking lot that he wasn't able to flag. So this was 81 dog droppings that were flagged from as soon as the snow melted. And it seems like most of them weren't bagged. Some of them were bagged, but the bags were just left alongside the trail. Again, it's interesting reading. I'm hopeful that the signage helps and it improves conditions there. But the reading is really important, and some of the MACC fundamentals as a commission, you know, we're actually charged with conservation, overseeing these conservation properties, that we may actually be doing a disservice to conservation by not really reining in our dog rules, especially on this property. So it's just something to think about going forward. That's really all I had. I'm not sure if anybody else, well, let me open up to commission members. Any thoughts, comments, questions since last time? Again, the signage has been placed at Bowers since we last talked. Right.
Yeah, Brian, I have some comments.
Please, Paul, go ahead.
So first of all, what is our plan now to determine if this is going to be successful or not?
I'm hopeful. I've asked them to see if the number of reported incidents comes down. And again, whether they're called animal control officers called or regular officers called, I'm not sure if the majority of the complaints, and Lauren, you might know this, if it comes to the conservation office or if they come to animal control.
No, I'm not sure. I think
Okay.
I think it's, you know, sometimes it's to the police, sometimes animal control, sometimes directly to Rebecca. So I'm not sure how they typically come in.
Yeah. So my other comment is that I've been thinking about this since last meeting, and I used to be a frequent user of Bowers Springs. I don't have a dog, and I never go there anymore, precisely because I enjoy it. And I think the purpose of our land is to have it open for the public, from everyone to enjoy it. And so I feel like we have 2 problems. One is we're not really keeping it available for everybody, or at least not enjoyable for everybody. And the other thing is the safety issue. And I'm concerned that we are waiting for the bad thing to really happen instead of doing something now to prevent it from ever happening. And we have Tom Denny Nature Camp there with all the kids. I really would hate to see that we have a serious incident with a dog because we're not willing to do what I think is the right thing for the town to do, and that is to put in the leash law. So that's my commentary.
No, I appreciate that. I was
Brian?
going to say, Sue, did you have?
Yeah.
Go-
I mean, I'm kind of in that same boat with Paul that yeah, I don't like I'm a trail runner. I don't go to Bowers Springs because of the reason that there are off-leash dogs. And you know, like I go trail running in other towns too, and I've been attacked by dogs. I've been attacked by dog owners who have some sense of entitlement. I'm not saying that the residents of Bolton are like that, but yeah, I think we need a leash law. on at least on our conservation properties.
Yeah, and I should say just to be clear, this would be a leash regulation
Yep.
on a
Yeah,
particular
fair.
property, and again, it's something we can explore in the future if we want to expand it to others. But oops, sorry, this discussion was just for Bowers Springs, and it's not a law. It would be a conservation regulation for the property. But I think your points are both valid with what you said, only to regulation. I'm sorry. Other comments, questions from commission members?
Yeah, Brian, I do.
Go ahead, Scott.
So if you read through the current rules and regarding dogs, it sounds like the issue is not the fact that we need to have more rules. The issue is that the current rules that are in place are not being followed and not being enforced. It's very clear on there. I know in the last meeting we had anecdotal comments that you have people there with 3 and 4 dogs. That's already against the rules. A leash rule wouldn't change the fact that those folks are already in violation of the bylaws. The law says that your dog must be under your control at all times and not interfere the enjoyment of other folks. So if you have an unruly dog that is not leashed or an unruly dog that is leashed, that dog is owner is still in violation of the dog rules. I don't know that adding more rules for people who are following the rules to follow and more rules for people who are not following the rules to ignore solves anything. And I know I'm the outsider on this conversation with potentially the majority of the board, but I do feel that particularly where we are talking about enforcing something that is different than what the town itself has enforced, I see no harm in this being brought to a larger audience than just 5 unelected people sitting on a committee making an arbitrary decision without the input, not necessarily without the say of the residents of Bolton. Bolton has held at least 5 No Kings rallies that I've attended because we have politicians that are making arbitrary rules because they have a piece of paper that says they can make rules. I feel that this is along the lines on that, and I feel very strongly that if we're going to change rules that are counter to what the town of Bolton already has established, it should go to the town of Bolton.
Hey, Brian.
So, well, I'll quickly, and then I'll give you a chance to speak. So, first of all, the rules that the town of Bolton has established for this conservation commission, for this conservation property, we established them. I was here when we wrote the rules. We established the rules for conservation. So it's not the town rules that we're changing. It's our rules for how we administer. Last time, as it came up, for us to administer conservation land is covered under Mass General Law. I take your point about elected officials.
That is debatable if that relates to this particular conversation,
that's fine.
But I hear
we're not going to solve that side, but I take your point about elected officials and all of that, right? So here's the thing. We have an elected select board. We serve at the pleasure of the select board. The select board can remove any of us at any point in time. And I would suggest to any members of the public here tonight, especially, if you're concerned about the dog laws or whatnot, if you think we are doing something wrong, or if we're doing something in arbitrary, capricious manner, vindictive wise, we're not following the law, we are acting like kings. If you think any of that, you can reach out to your select board and ask them to remove us. Your elected officials have the ability to remove us at any point in time if, again, we're somehow violating the rules or laws, or trying to overstep our bounds. Or they want to manage conservation land. That's fine. You have 100% redress to that. You can also take us to court. You have access to the law. You have access to your elected officials. If you have any kind of redress with anything we're doing, That I just wanted to say that. Sue, go ahead. Did you have a question?
No, I think you covered about what I was going to say.
Okay.
One other thing I would say is, like before I moved to Bolton, I used to live in the city. We used to live pretty close to the Middlesex Fells, and so the DCR had a leash law there. Like every dog had to be leashed. Obviously, not a lot of people followed that, but they made it really clear at one point that they didn't want just a on voice control law. Rather, they wanted a leash law, and it was so that if your dog was on a leash, other people would see that and also be like, okay, I got to put it on a leash. If you think your dog is okay on voice control, and they might be, somebody else might be like, oh, no leash law, I'm okay. I think a leash law really does help, or leash regulation. Sorry, I'm not gonna say law again, but you know what I mean. Like, I think the leash regulation would definitely help.
Okay. Other comments, questions, thoughts?
Brian, I'd just add,
Go ahead.
after you finished the board, I don't know if you saw it, you did have someone put something in the chat saying they weren't able to raise their hand.
Yeah, I was going to open up for public comment and question next. So, commission members, good right now? All right. So, are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? And again, it looked like there was a woman in the chat who, let's see, was she able to get online? Was that
This
Caitlin
Cassidy?
Bradford? No,
Well,
CF.
Cassidy Fisher was the one that said she would like to speak. I don't know if she's still here or not.
I was going to say, if she is, Lauren, can we unmute her? And if not, I see there is another question waiting too. All right. Go,
I'm sorry, it's hard for me to see because I'm sharing my screen right now.
I'm so sorry. That's a good point. Oh, Cassidy Fisher, she's here. So if you can find her in the.
Oh, yeah, I'm asking her to unmute now. There we go.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Fisher, go ahead.
Can you hear me? I'm trying to use my
Yes.
video too.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was trying to. Sorry, this is actually Cassidy Fisher's dad. When I logged in, I don't know why it shows her. She's upstairs. She's probably going to be very embarrassed when she hears her name. Anyhow, so I just would like to. I'm actually a resident of Harvard, but I know Bolton's taking the lead on this, and because there's obviously I've talked to Harvard Conservation Trust, I've talked to Rebecca, I've talked to the Harvard conservation agent. My house abuts the conservation land. Is like it comes very close, and I can just say that the signs aren't doing anything. When I was telling Cassidy earlier today that I was going to participate in this meeting and why, she's like, "Oh, speak of the devil," as she's looking out the window. Nonstop, every day, dogs in the backyard, dog poops in the backyard, dogs come in, they pee. I've had them, like when I'm in a meeting, like barking at my screen on the slider. And I have a small dog that I keep on a leash. I've been rushed so many times that I actually don't like going out there anymore. And that's like a shame, because that's why I moved here. And like lately, and by the way, both my daughters have been rushed. My wife got bit a few weeks ago. It's crazy out there. And frankly, to speak to the gentleman who thinks this should be put to a vote, it's like, when they put these kind of things to a vote, if enough people galvanize, like the dog walking group, my rights get completely trampled. I like to cross country ski out there, and I have a rule that I can't go there more than like a day and a half after a snowfall, because it's just dog crap everywhere. I mean, it is so gross back there right now. It's unbelievable. So, there's a reason that most communities have, leash laws. And frankly, if there was a leash law here, and I recognize that people will ignore it, but having a sign that says your dog has to be on a leash, well, for the people that are not going to pay attention to that, and I'm kind of fine with that, but it messages them that they need to be on their best behavior. You know, voice control, I can see it and like behind my house every day. People, there's like, if the dog is 100 yards away, you know, I mean, he'll eventually come back, but you know, like not before when I'm walking out there, before they rush me. I've had to pick my small dog up because, you know, I'm not gonna like wait for him to get bit by big dogs that are angrily rushing us. And then there'll be 2, 3, 4, you know, and I've had him picked up. And one time I'm like yelling and waving my walking stick at the dogs, and a guy came over and he yelled at me and spit at me. I mean, you're just like waiting for. I've heard violent encounters with dogs and people back there that because I live right here. It's like I can hear them yelling behind my house. It's frankly, it's like Lord of the Flies back there. And there's other people I've been told when I've complained to people because their dogs will just rush, and I'm just like not comfortable with that. And I've been told if you don't like that, then you shouldn't come here because that's how it is here. And I was like, I'm not coming here. I live here. You know, it's just, you know, I've heard it's on social media, like, oh, come here and like let your dogs run free. And, you know, frankly, I'm in the environmental field too. And I look at the amount of feces all over the place. And there's all these like, you know, vernal pools everywhere. No one's controlling their, I don't know, if they're ground nesting birds that want to nest it. Like I look at some of those meadows, they look like they'd be prime killdeer habitat. There's no way they'd go over there with all these dogs running around. So anyhow, I just, I'm glad to hear that a couple of the people on the board are taking this seriously, and I just hope something is done about it. I mean, you know, frankly, there's like, as you pointed out, there wouldn't be a leash law in Bolton, just like there wouldn't be a leash law in Harvard, but things are out of hand back there. And if people, you know, like it's just that property, it's gonna get ruined, and basically the ability of other users to use it is completely compromised, as though the primary function of that property, those properties, because I realize it's a collection of Harvard Trust, Harvard Conservation, and Bolton Conservation, but basically it's like the primary use is like a dog park at this point. So anyhow, I just wanted to, and I've sent some emails to you guys today, like to the, you know, basically to Liz Allen, you know, so you probably haven't had a chance to, Rebecca probably hasn't had a chance to share them with you yet. But one of the things I included was a letter to the editor from October to the Harvard Press. And there was a jogger back there was complaining because he got bit and he don't like going back there anymore because of that. You know, like this just shouldn't be allowed. And, you know, and frankly, just to put it to an election is like with mob rules, like whoever can get, you know, because I know how it works in Harvard. It's like not that many people show up to a town meeting. So if someone can orchestrate like the largest group to go, and that largest group could be 20 people, and the rights of everybody gets trampled. It's like kind of an unfortunate sort of a byproduct of our, you know, sort of our voting systems. But, you know, I can tell you that when I'm walking my dog on the street, which I do mostly, I still go, my wife goes back there, my daughter goes back there. My daughter, just a few months ago, she picked the dog up, dogs like knocked her down. I mean, these things just shouldn't happen, let alone with the regularity that I'm telling you that they happen at. But when I'm walking my dog on the street, and you know, and I talk to other people, that people are just afraid to go back there. I mean, are they all going to show up to an election and put it to a vote? Maybe not. We all just kind of path of least resistance. But you know, I'm just like, people is like, are the property administrators just going to wait till something truly horrible happens? I actually heard there was a police incident over on the Bolton side. So, I mean, these things happen, and everybody thinks that they're a responsible dog owner. No one's going to be like, I'm an irresponsible dog owner. So, you know, frankly, if your dog is 50 yards, 100 yards away, which is most of them, I mean, you know, there are some that, you know, the dogs are right with them. and even fewer that they'll see I have a dog on a leash and they'll put theirs on a leash. And I'm amazed and impressed. That almost never happens. Those people are far and away like the minority of people that are out there. So anyway, thank you for, letting me speak, vent,
No,
whatever you call it.
Appreciate the
Very
comments.
frustrating. And it's like, that's the reason I moved to this house 12 years ago, was because I had these trails behind the house. And, and it's like, even if I don't have the dog, it's like, as far as like running, biking, skiing, there's just dog crap everywhere. I've been rushed by dogs when I'm on skis, and frankly, I'm not that good. And that was very alarming to me. So, anyway, I don't know what more I can say. Like, the stories are endless because I have 12 years of them abutting the property. So
No,
anyway, thank you for letting me take the time.
No, I appreciate your comments. I think you made clear your feelings, and you've brought up some really good points. Let me, Caitlin Bradford, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you for your time. I think I think it's a fascinating thing how we can be in the same space and have totally different experiences. I have lived in Bolton for 19 years and have gone and really enjoyed, both with my children and my dogs, Bowers Springs for all of those years. And I don't honestly think I've ever had a negative experience with a dog. So again, I totally respect different people's experiences, but just to put out there that that's not everyone's experience. I'm also remembering back to last week, I had thought that when the notes from the animal control officer were read, that there was a fairly limited number of complaints. I thought it was one, in terms of bites in particular, I thought it was one animal that had been reported twice. So again, I just want to both totally respect the experience of the gentleman who's spoken, and I totally agree that should not be having a negative experience in his own backyard, but also want to, as much as possible, keep us data based. The data that was read last week did not seem to support that this was a widespread problem. And I'll just say from personal experience, it's not a problem I've seen. I guess aside from that, I want to bring us back to some of the suggestions that were made last week. And I continue, as I said last meeting, to be someone who tries to see a middle ground. And it does seem like some of the things we talked about last week might meet the gentleman's concern. So for example, we talked about signage that would make it an on-leash area adjacent to properties that would then keep animals out of his yard, which is, obviously animals should not be on private property. Again, I wonder about things like at the main field by the parking lot, where animals do tend to kind of wrestle and play in that area, if that's an area that could be off leash. And then again, certain areas of the trails could be on leash. I'm hearing to some extent that we're conflating the leash issue with the lack of people picking up feces. And those, I would just say that those are two totally different things. Somebody could have their dog on a leash and still fail to pick up the dog's feces. So I guess to Scott's point, like it continues to be a big question about enforcement. I know the dog owners that I speak to when I'm there are very concerned about it. And I've actually seen at least 2 or 3 different people over the last couple of weeks with big buckets. I saw somebody with like a shovel and a big scoop. So the people who are trying to do the right thing are trying to do it for everybody. They're out there trying to clean up the poop of other people who haven't taken care of it. And I think just the other thing that I would throw out, and again, I'm repeating myself from the last meeting, but I feel like it's important to keep it at the forefront of the conversation. I can't read, this font is too small for me, so I can't make out what the original purpose of the land was. But as a resident of Bolton, I think a frustration to me is some of the behaviors of people not picking up the poop or not having dogs under control are professional dog walkers who are there with, I've counted as many as 10 dogs to one person. Or, people, I've chatted with people who come from all around, towns as far as a half an hour away. And I agree with the gentleman who spoke. It is, I think the land is, perhaps the number of dogs coming are more than the land can sustain. And so I don't know if there's a way to prioritize Bolton landowners. My concern continues to be that even if people have a dog on leash, if it's drawing in dog walkers with 10 dogs and people from a half an hour radius away, it's still going to be too much in terms of feces, too much in terms of trail use. So I don't know how we control that, but it does seem like if we have local folks from Bolton who have dogs who are under control, it feels unfair to penalize them when they are, for the most part, not the issue. Thank you for hearing me out.
Appreciate your comments as well. Other members of the public here tonight to comment? I'm not seeing any. Okay. So last week when we met, or last meeting when we met, talked to a number of the local residents, including Ms. Bradford, and we had agreed to try at first to go with some enhanced signage to see if that would if that could in any way help with the problem or limit it. That signage went up last week. I think 1 week's worth of data isn't a fair real shot at that. It's something that we agreed to do that. I think we need to give it, at least a minimum amount of time to see if it's having any kind of effect. So for now, for me, and again, I'll put it out to the other commission, I would say we wouldn't make any changes at this meeting, but that we would add it to our agenda for our meeting in 3 weeks. Will be a month after the signage has been up. Lauren, I'm hoping, and I know Rebecca has provided some examples of complaints that we've received in the past, town employees getting attacked, things along those lines. But if we could, is there any way to get some of those counts of how many incidents and or emails we received within, a certain period? And so we can try to compare and see if we're having any effect.
Sure. You mean since we've placed the signage in?
Well,
and I guess looking
to
back as well, just to make sure we have an accurate count. And I just want to note too that in Rebecca's notes, sometimes sometimes these incidences are not always reported as well. But I will see if we can get more of an accurate read on the data that we have of how many incidences have occurred that we have on record.
Okay. Go ahead, Scott. You had a question or comment?
More of a comment. So no, I appreciate it. I think that what thing we should explore as part of this trial period that you're proposing, Brian, which I'm in support of, obviously, is I think the issue is less about the rules and more about enforcement. We do have a contracted dog officer. I don't think that's the right word, so I apologize for using the wrong word. Perhaps we should coordinate during this focus time at like high use times that person is present to spot check, because again, the rules state you're supposed to pick up after your dog. You're only allowed to have at most 2 dogs, although it is written poorly because it says 1 per hand. And as a veteran who knows people with only 1 hand, that's a poorly written rule. But I get the point, but there shouldn't be people there with multiple dogs. And additionally, if there are individuals there who are there with dogs that are unruly, leashed or otherwise, those people should be asked to leave and cited. And I think that in conjunction with the signage is important, but the most importantly is having enforcement to it, because right now we're yelling stop, or I'll say stop again. And there's no repercussions to the people who are not following the rules. There's no repercussions to the people who have the dangerous dogs. And I think that's where we should be focused on, and allowing people to enjoy Bower Park equally and fairly, whether they have dogs or not.
Okay.
Brian, can I just make a quick comment?
Please
The
go ahead.
animal control officer, I don't believe does any sort of patrolling. I believe that she only responds to calls. And the other kind of kicker that I would just like to bring to the board's attention is we are now making this a extremely resource intensive project. And I'm not against doing that, but we just have to be very cognizant that this is going to require police enforcement, and we would need the police officers, which are already resource strapped, to be making that level of commitment, which is not really the board's decision to make in my purview. So I just wanted to make sure that that's brought up to the board's attention, as well as, although the ACO stated that there were incidences in Bolton, we did not get record of anything that happened in Harvard, and this is shared property. So just bring that to everyone's attention as well, that this isn't just, Bolton's isolated incidences. These are both shared incidences between Bolton and Harvard. So it's not just, kind of, we can look at one town and take that as a snapshot in time. So we should be joining resources of, if there is a reduction in both Bolton's call volume, but also the town of Harvard's call volume as well. Just get more data points on the board.
I think that's a great idea. And Lauren, if you could help facilitate that or ask Rebecca to reach out. It sounds like you guys have been in contact with Harvard as well too, but it'd be interesting to see if they had data they could share.
And just out of curiosity, I know that we've been discussing like dog bites and that stuff of that magnitude. I'm just curious if there have been any other public safety related incidences. I'm thinking of, we've just had a lot of ice melt recently. Have there been any dogs that have gone through the ice that have required any other resources, such as the fire department, to go and rescue both people and dogs? So, and that would be required from both Harvard and Bolton as well.
Additional, anybody else with any members of the public here tonight to have additional comments or questions, or commission members? Okay. Seeing that, so I was going to say this was just up for discussion. It's not something we have to continue, but Lauren, I'm going to ask that we do add it to our next agenda. And again, we'll try to capture as much data as we can between meetings and discuss again at our next meeting with anything new we found out on any of these fronts, including looking into like leash-free zones, which I think Rebecca did ask about in certain towns and how they handle it. And hopefully we'll get more information on that as well. Okay. Moving on tonight. Sorry. I think was that. I'm trying to think. Don't see anything. So I think the next thing I see on our agenda is the enforcement order updates. And I don't believe I have any of those right now. Oh, our minutes. So in your packet is the minutes from our March 3rd, 2026
Sorry,
meeting.
Brian.
Go ahead, Lauren.
It's on the annotated agenda, but it was removed from the agenda. Those minutes are not ready in draft form for this meeting, so they should be ready for the next meeting.
Excellent. So we can skip that. Yeah, we discussed earlier the orange flag survey at Bower Springs. Do you know, I was going to say that was he was collecting the data on the dog waste throughout the end of March 2026. I'm trying to think of what was it all of March, or it was basically that last week of March is when he was flagging?
Yes, I think he's looking through, to the end of March 2026. He'll be going out there, a couple times a week and flagging all of the areas where there's dog waste at Bower Springs.
Okay. Yeah.
Brian, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Scott.
Just so I'm not when we're talking about Bower Springs, are we talking about just the park area of Bower Springs, or are we talking about Bower Springs and all the connecting trails?
Yeah, the entire conservation area.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I was confused. So thank you for clarifying that.
No, you're fine. And I should point out too that like it abuts, and part of it's in Harvard, which they have control of, but so it's the Bolton property.
But it's the entire area, not just the park area.
Correct.
Or the
Yeah,
small,
and there
not
is
the public area.
technically, yeah, there's no, it's just there's a maintained field where you first come in, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. The rest is okay. So we have a number of Environmental Day related events coming up. It's starting in March 22nd, 26th, March 22nd, 26th, and then all throughout April, the 4th, 17th, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 30th. There's a lot to read off right now, but it's listed under the community events section on the Concom website, but it's also, all of these events are listed on the town calendar. So it's a number of things like guided hikes, story time and activity at the Bolton Public Library, community garden site cleanup, pop-up arboritas. It's well worth looking at if you are interested at all in celebrating Environmental Day. I think we don't really have any updates on trail stewardship. Our volunteer land steward position is still available. Lauren, is there anything I missed this evening?
Nope, I think we got it all.
That is excellent. All right. Commission members have any new business or anything they'd like to see added to the agenda for our next meeting? None. I'd like to make a motion that we hereby adjourn the Tuesday, March 17th, 2026 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. Do I hear a second for adjourning?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Sue.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
And Lauren, I'm an aye as well.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah,
Thank
see
you,
you
you
all.
too.
I'll
Thanks, yeah.
see you all in 3 weeks, if not before.
All right.
Take care.